Welcome to Dollars and Cents. Our podcast is designed to provide listeners with financial advice in a language you can understand. Created and hosted by Marc Freedman, President and CEO at Freedman Financial, he discusses timely topics that help individuals and families make smart financial decisions. Count on lots of energy, candid discussion, and a few laughs. And now, here's your host of Dollars and Cents, Marc Freedman of Freedman Financial.
Welcome back to another edition of Dollars and Cents with Freedman Financial. My name is Marc Freedman.
And I'm Marian Gilman.
And we're here to provide you with some financial advice in a language you can understand. You know, this past week, CBS News put out a report that talked about wealth in America. What does it mean to be rich? And I thought the report, did you see that story, Marian?
I didn't see that story, Marc.
See, I'm blindsiding her again with today's podcast.
Me as well.
Yeah, and the story was interesting because it talked about what does it mean to be rich in America, and the way they measured rich was by how much money you make.
And do you think that's a good measure?
I think it's a horrible way of measuring stuff.
I don't think many of our clients would look at that as a great way to measure how rich you are.
I would agree, but one of the things that's interesting is, first of all, it was how much do you need to be rich in each state? So in the state of Massachusetts,
that makes a little more sense.
I don't know, but in the state of Massachusetts, it said if your household made over $600,000, you were considered to be rich.
Okay.
But if you were living in Mississippi or Alabama and your household made over $260,000, you were considered rich. And this
big difference.
Yeah, sure. But this comes out of a report that CBS News put both, it was on television, you can find it online, but they neglected to talk about the value of wealth. And I find it interesting as we've talked to college kids lately. We did a podcast just last week on college kids. As you talk to our clients, everybody wants to know, how am I doing compared to everybody else?
And they're not measuring it by income. They're measuring it by accumulated wealth, typically, in terms of how much they've accumulated in assets, whether it's liquid assets or the value of their property, so their net worth as opposed to income.
Absolutely. But if you ask people, how much money do you have to make to be considered rich? What's generally been the approach there, Mary?
So it's usually about 2 times whatever they make.
And we're not making that up, right? I mean,
No,
that's been reported in multiple sources.
Right.
That generally when you interview people, they'll say, if I could be making twice what I'm making now, I'd be considered rich.
Right.
And I still don't believe that income solves the problem.
I neither do I, because it's not what you make, it's what you keep.
Absolutely,
right?
And that's what we've been saying right along.
Exactly.
But neither is the point that comes out. Wall Street Journal, I think, did a story, well over a month ago, and they do lots of these stories. Can you retire on $1 million? Can you retire on $5 million? They'll ask those questions.
Well, do you remember that book, The Number?
The Number. In fact, it's sitting back here, back there somewhere.
It was a huge success.
Lee Eisenberg wrote that book.
Yeah, we heard him speak. I mean, he was a real huge success for many years, and everybody wanted to know, well, what's the number? What is the number I need to have in order to retire successfully?
And you remember what followed from that? Remember ING, the orange ball?
Oh, I remember.
They used to have these commercials where people would pop up, behind a fence, or they'd be standing somewhere and there'd be a number in front of them. What is your number? My number is
$170,000.
And so what does wealth really, when someone talks about being rich and what does it mean to be wealthy or whatever, it's different for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not necessarily money either.
No, it isn't. And frankly, those that don't have any money will certainly tell you that, won't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They'll find all sorts of reasons.
But think about this. At a certain level, I mean, everybody needs a certain amount of money to feel comfortable.
Right.
You have to have enough to provide a roof over your head and a comfortable place to live, food for yourself, for your family, all the basics, all the necessities. But after that, does more money make you happier?
Well, what it does is, in fact, we've talked a lot about Morgan Housel recently, okay? And Morgan Housel writes lots of books. He does podcasts.
He's great.
One of his most recent podcasts, he talked about this very subject, actually, and he talked about the ego that's involved with wealth. So think about this. Like you just mentioned, yes, we need to have enough income to be able to support our lifestyle, to be able to have food, shelter, clothing, all that stuff.
Yep.
But who decides whether we live in a 2-bedroom Cape or a 4,000 McMansion, 4,000 square foot McMansion.
Yeah.
It's ego. Once you have your basic necessities, it comes down to ego. And what he also says, though, is if your ego doesn't allow you to prepare for the future, then you're having a disastrous experience in preparing for richness or wealth in the future.
Exactly.
It's a trade-off.
Certainly is.
What do you want to do as you have your basic needs, and I'll tell you, when you and I were growing up, our basic needs were far different from what the basic needs are of today's generation, isn't it?
No such thing as cell phones, right?
Right. So,
no, we couldn't afford it, but even if they were available, but they were not available. I mean, those were long past when I was a teenager.
Yeah. How many convenience fees did you pay for?
Convenience fees. I don't think we had debit cards.
I'm
not really sure. I can't remember.
You know what else we didn't have?
What?
Bottled water.
We probably didn't.
We probably didn't. We didn't. We didn't. In fact, we didn't, right? Where would you get your water source from if you wanted water?
The sink.
The sink,
tap.
the water bubbler, or the hose, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That was actually a good source.
And when you...
my parents wouldn't let me back in the house when you're out playing.
Exactly.
And you're all dirty. You're not coming in the house for a glass of water.
And by the way, when you were at school, were you allowed to bring a water bottle in with you to the classroom?
Oh my God, that was...
Could you have snacks that you were able to bring and just kind of munch on during class?
Never.
Of course not.
No, that was,
No.
You ate lunch in the cafeteria.
And what did you have for lunch?
Well, I actually usually would buy my lunch.
Right, but what did you have to drink?
Milk.
Milk or chocolate milk, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that was it.
I actually didn't like chocolate milk, believe it or not.
All right,
so it was always milk.
But that was it. So those are the basics, right?
Oh,
now,
and we didn't have vending machines down there.
No, we did not. We did not. No, we had thermoses that were made of glass inside. So when you dropped your thermos, you drank glass. It's true. Okay, so back to the topic of that we were focusing on, which is this point of when you're now building wealth. And we see a lot of clients that have accumulated wealth. They have their 401ks. They put money aside in savings accounts. They have their home. They have cars. They have money. All the different things that they accumulate. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, how much is enough?
Absolutely. And, we've heard stories about people who essentially are working themselves to death or working themselves into an illness because they're working so much and they feel like it's not enough. I have to have a second job, or I have to do this, I have to moonlight as this, or I want to become an influencer and I'm working 24/7 to become an influencer. A job that was not available when we were kids, by the way.
Encyclopedia salesmen were available back then.
Exactly, I know. In any event.
There are some jobs that come and go, Marion.
There you go. So there were people who actually do work themselves, and work themselves so hard, and they're so stressed because they always feel like they have to get to the next level, make more money, accomplish more, and it's not necessarily a good mindset to have.
No, one of the things that we've learned as financial advisors is that many of our clients that come to us as they approach retirement, they worry whether they have enough money to spend in retirement. And in reality, I don't want to say they have too much, because I don't think there's ever such thing as too much. But they have accumulated enough wealth that they don't have to take the risks that are necessary moving forward in the way they invest the money.
Exactly.
They can use more of the money that they have and still not fear running out of it.
Right.
But the question becomes, how much? And how much depends upon what, Marion?
Your lifestyle.
Exactly.
I mean, essentially, so there's no number out there that should apply to everybody. It's not based on age. It's not based on your time horizon for the money as to how much you need. What it's based on is what your spending habits are and what kind of lifestyle you want to live and what your goals are. I mean, your goal might be to bring the family to Disney every year, like Mark. So, that might be a huge goal for you, and that's something you want to work towards, and that's important. But is it important that on, every single day of your life you go out to a lavish dinner, or you spend all this money on, whatever it might be, wine, like luxury items? And maybe that's not a goal for you. So those different things take different amounts of money.
Absolutely.
And at a certain point, you look at it and you have to say, well, what is the right amount of money for me and for my family?
And so there's obviously the question is, how do you figure that out? I mean, and that's actually not nearly as hard as you think it is.
It really isn't.
And we have some techniques that we use in our office that really give clients an understanding of what they need to spend based upon their historical nature of spending money.
Right.
And usually, to be very honest, what clients think they spend and what they actually spend are two very different things, aren't they?
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot too, because a lot of times people look at, and they start to add up what their monthly expenses are, and you always forget some big stuff.
But you know what doesn't forget how much you spend? Your bank statements.
Yes, exactly.
If you
So
go to your
that's the
bank
best
statements,
way.
it tells you exactly how much money
Right.
went out of the house and how much money came into the house. And so, look, we have clients at Freedman Financial that on average they want to spend $25,000 a month. We also have clients that spend $3,000 a month and they can't figure out how to spend more.
And clearly, those two different types of clients need very different amounts of money. So what's enough for the person who wants to spend $25,000 a month versus what's enough for the person that wants to spend $3,000 enough are two vastly different numbers.
Yeah, but what is also oftentimes forgotten when factoring how much you need is how much is already coming in the form of income. Right. So for instance, we happen to have a client who has a pension that pays him $40,000 a month.
That's
Now,
pretty good.
Yeah, he was an executive. Now, he might have $1 million in investment assets, but he gets $40,000 coming in a month for he and his spouse if he were to die. That's a totally different structure than someone who says, I've accumulated $1 million and I have a $20,000 a year Social Security check. That's or someone that says, I have $5 million in investment assets. I collect Social Security of about $40,000 a year between my wife and I, and we want to spend $100,000 a year. Can we do that? Based upon those basic factors, probably. We'd of course need to look at everything,
Right.
but the answer is probably. But everybody's situation is different. So when you're looking at these headlines, and these headlines are so darn misleading, that say, how much do you, is $1 million enough to retire on? Is $3 million enough? Well, do you want to
Ignore it.
Really ignore it, because you have to ask yourself, what does your lifestyle look like? And that is something that you can control.
That's right.
You can figure out how much do you need.
And we talk a lot about that, what you can control and what you can't control. So when you're very young, you can control how much you spend. And I know it's difficult sometimes to say, well, I need to delay my gratification in buying certain things right now because I really need to save for the future. When you're 25 years old, you're really not thinking about retirement, but that's the time to think about it. So you want to just, again, you can control what you spend, whether you're 25 or you're 65. So that becomes something that you decide how you want to live, whether you work yourself to death and work a few more years, or you stop spending quite as much.
Yeah, that delayed gratification that you talk about, Marion, is very important, because I think the generations, the baby boom generation, the generation before that, understood delayed gratification. They were always told, put money aside for a rainy day. And
well, I don't know about you, but growing up, we had to, if we wanted something, we had to save up for it.
That's right.
In cash. We didn't have
Credit cards or anything like that. But it was delayed gratification, right?
That's exactly.
And today,
so we're used to doing that.
And today you hear this expression of work-life balance. So I don't want to delay all of the gratification. I want to get benefits of it now, because frankly, what if I die? What if something happens? And there's
very true.
And there's something to be said for that. It's finding that balance. Sadly, though, many in the younger generations are foregoing the gratification at a later time and enjoying it all today because, and I hate to say this, but they're also seeing in many cases their parents who are not spending their money to their fullest, and they know that a inheritance may be coming their way.
That's dangerous.
It is very dangerous. But the
Yes.
sad part is, mom and dad aren't dying so quickly, are they?
No, and again, you can look at a parent, and we've seen situations like this.
Lots of them.
Where the parents have significant assets until they don't. Because all of a sudden they get sick, they need people to care for them in their home, they need assistance in their daily lives, and they have to pay for this. And you know what? You worked hard for your money. You should have the resources that you need, and you should spend it the way you want to spend it to live a comfortable life.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean, you can do both.
You
Pay
can't.
for yourself and leave a lot to the kids.
So just as you said, we're trying to answer this question of how much is enough, and it's not that easy to define how much is enough. Especially, you can define how much is enough on a piece of paper, on a spreadsheet, but personally it has to feel differently too. But the third component around that is how much risk do you need to take moving forward if you have enough or don't have enough. How do you play that game? Because we find all too many cases where people have ample amounts of money and they still want to continue to take more risk than they need to.
Right. Some of them, invest for the kids because they figure I'm never going to use this money. And that's fine if that's your goal. On the other hand, there are many people who feel like they have to take that risk even though they don't, because they don't understand or they can't see it. It's not tangible to them as to how that money will exist over time if they don't get any growth on it.
And I think one of the ways that you can get to feel comfortable with this, if you start working with a financial advisor early in your life, I should say, you can begin to develop a portfolio performance report that shows 5 years, 10 years, 15 years invested. Because when you start to have that history, all of a sudden the bumps in the road that come along periodically don't feel so painful anymore because you've been used to that, used to the potholes, you're used to the detours, you're used to the things that stand in the way. And that's why it's important to get started, to put something into place to make sure that you have visibility around everything that you own, everything that you can earn, and all of the various components of supporting your financial lifestyle.
And how that looks, how that can project out over the long term.
And that is what we call financial advice in a language you can understand. That's going to do it for us this week. Before we head out, I want to remind you to sign up for our free weekly newsletter. It's called Planning Pointers. It lands in your inbox every Friday, 10:30 in the morning. If you aren't getting it, all you need to do is go to our website, freedmanfinancial.com. That's Freedman.
2 E's and a D.
Financial.com. Put your name and email in the bottom of any page on the website. You'll get the newsletter. And join us each and every week for more financial advice in a language you can understand. This is Dollars and Cents. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
During today's Dollars and Cents episode with Freedman Financial, your hosts may have discussed specific financial planning and investment ideas that are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Please remember that investing involves risk and may include loss of principal. Although the money market fund seeks to preserve the value of your investment at $1 per share, it is possible to lose money by investing in the fund. Always consult a certified financial planner professional, qualified attorney, or tax advisor prior to investing to determine what is appropriate for you. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC.